that now there is a huge movement of physicians who prescribe time outside, who prescribe, yes, because nature deficit disorder. And we're starting to name all of this, and we're starting to realize our children are never outside and they're never exposed to microbiome and they don't have vitamin D and all this stuff. So we're starting to wrap our mind around it.
Welcome to Zestful Aging, the podcast where we celebrate aging with vibrance and we defy the stereotypes of what it means to age. I'm your host, Nicole Christina, a psychotherapist of more than 30 years, here to introduce you to my off-the-mainstream guests who will energize and inspire you. My hope is to create optimism about getting older and help you cultivate zest and joy in this season of your life. And I love to hear feedback from you, my listeners. Please drop me a line at zestfulaging@gmail.com. I read every single comment. And to find out more about this podcast, hop on over to zestfulaging.com. Well, you all know that I love nature and I'm fascinated by its healing benefits. Well, today we're going to go one step further and talk about a healing practice you may have never heard of. Now, I do ask that you keep an open mind because it can sound unconventional until you understand the science behind it. And it is hard to describe without sounding too woo-woo, but there is robust science behind it. And today we're going to hear all about the science and the practice from Dr. Laura Condover. She's a holistic physician and an internationally recognized grounding advocate, and her work's been featured in many news and media outlets. And she's here to explain why grounding is essential to our good health. Welcome to the show, Laura.
That was a great introduction. That was perfect. I agree. You got to be open-minded about it.
Yeah. Well, I'm a tree hugger. I'd probably kiss trees if I thought it'd be helpful. So for me, it wasn't a big step, but I think for some people it might be. And I guess I want to start with, and I know this, when you're in your own bubble of your research and stuff, it's easy to forget that other people don't, eat and breathe all of this kind of stuff. And, I have to admit, as being, a fairly educated person, I don't really usually think of my body as electrical. But you're pretty clear. And the fact is, it is electrical. Can you give us some examples of that to start?
Yeah. How the body functions off electricity.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Like let's just start at the beginning.
That's such a good idea. I've never had anyone start with the electrical activity of the body, but that's so phenomenal because it'll make the segue so much easier.
Okay.
So
good.
yes. So, it's interesting because even the most conventional physician on earth, I mean, I went to medical school, and in medical school, while we never talked about using the electrical properties of the body for healing, we definitely learned about the electrical property of the body for how it functions and to diagnose disease. So for example, everyone knows like an EKG heartbeat, right? Like if you think you have a heart attack, you're going to get hooked up to an EKG and they're going to look at that classic heartbeat rhythm to see if your heart is functioning correctly. What they're looking at is an electrical impulse through your heart. Same with your brain. If you've had a stroke or you need a sleep study, they're going to put the electrodes on your head and look at a printout. That's an electrical printout of the activity of your heart. Same with your muscles. If you have a problem with your muscles, they can do an EMG, which is putting electrodes on your muscles to see the strength of the contraction. And honestly, the entire body works that way. Everything about it's conductive. Your gut peristalsis, swallowing, thinking, dreaming, talking right now, the blinking, everything, breathing to take a deep breath. It's all only because your diaphragm is innervated and draws that breath in for you, or you wouldn't be functional. So there isn't one system or one cell in your body that doesn't function based off of electrical impulse.
That's so interesting. I mean, I'm just sort of thinking about it and sort of imagining it. And it's like, it's pretty cool. We're like these little batteries walking around.
100%. That's a great way to put it.
So now, I actually, well, I don't want to get off subject because we're in a good track now, but I also want to find out how you discovered grounding. But let's talk about then some of the problems we're having as a society disconnected from the earth.
Okay. So I love how you said at the intro that it seems like it's a jump to wrap your mind around the fact that not only are human bodies, but the earth itself is electrical. It actually outputs a heartbeat, the Schumann resonance. It's a DC energy. It's not the fake man-made AC energy, that your house or your light bulb functions off of. It's not that. That's only less than 200 years ago that we, made man-made electricity. This is DC energy, just the natural current of the living universe, and everything is in contact with the earth receives this DC energy, like trees and animals. And really, until we invented plastics, human beings, like the entire history of mankind, was in conjunction with this DC energy output that the earth has. And I don't think it'd be a huge coincidence that our entire body functions off of DC energy. That it should be natural for us to be completely separate, because like you said, our body is a closed loop. It's basically a battery. And if our entire body functions off of electricity, where is it getting tanked back up? I mean, batteries are finite, and not until we insulated ourselves from the world and we have rubber tires and rubber shoes and insulated homes with insulation in the walls and flooring that's up off the earth, not until that occurred were we ever disconnected with that natural DC energy. And so at first, when we invented plastics, we didn't necessarily realize that diseases were starting to accrue, inflammation was starting to accrue. Like there's a little bit of a price to pay for us not recharging our battery to our docking station. But post-plastic, basically, as this disconnect has grown, we've just seen an exponential skyrocketing of all inflammatory diseases, from autoimmune diseases and anything that is resonant with our electrical output. So like, insomnia, for example, or heart disease, like everything that's electrical and run by the electrical, centers of our body is all just skyrocketing in disease. And so, how you said at the beginning, it's a jump to think like, that we would need to go back to possibly connecting with that DC energy source. But then once you start realizing how electrical we are and how we were evolved in this closed electrical system of this universe and how compatible it is, then it becomes kind of weird to think like, wait, why did we separate so much? Why did we invent plastic? How, even if I go hiking or I have a kid who plays sports, it's very possible that they still don't ever touch the earth because we've got plastic cleats on, and then we have like the shin guards, and then we have, when I'm hiking, I've got hiking shoes on and a plastic parka, and I can be outside and still not grounded to the earth, still not touching the earth. And that's just really recent. And so if we can really take a step back and say, actually kind of the abnormal thing is the disconnect, then it opens up a whole new world of possibility for someone who can get to that point.
It's so interesting because I've read some just little excerpts from native cultures who walked around either barefoot or in animal skin shoes, right?
Absolutely.
And so I read a quote about, if you don't do that, then you get sick.
Yeah, absolutely.
In touch with that.
That's exactly right. Like, again, it's just so super recent that we can go from sun up to sundown and then all through the night without ever connecting to the earth, because in, past cultures, yes, like to give birth, you go stand out on the earth and squat down on the earth and you get strength and energy from that. And even in quote unquote modern science, like before, a couple hundred years ago, before we had more advancements, we still did seek healing from the earth. So a long time ago, the prescription, when physicians did not know what to do, was, okay, 2 weeks seaside, 2 weeks at the beach, or 2 weeks, even physicians, yes, they would understand.
Remember the healing springs.
Like it's really not till recently that we just don't even think of prescribing that anymore. And actually, sadly, we've gotten so disconnected that now there is a huge movement of physicians who prescribe time outside, who prescribe, because nature deficit disorder. And we're starting to name all of this. And we're starting to realize our children are never outside and they're never exposed to microbiome and they don't have vitamin D and all this stuff. So we're starting to wrap our mind around it. And it's starting to become part of conventional medicine again, but we're just at the beginning of that, I think.
I saw that, not so much in the U.S., but in other places.
Yep.
So that must be gratifying for you to see that, other MDs are like, yeah,
Yeah.
there's value here.
Yeah.
So could you talk a little bit about the actual process? And I'm going to also ask you to talk about winter because I'm in the
Yeah.
Syracuse area and it's always winter here.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about how people might start the process of connecting with the earth and receiving the benefits of the electrical charge of the earth.
Okay. So for grounding, it's super simple. It literally is direct contact. So just like you would plug in your phone to recharge it or a battery to recharge it if it was a rechargeable battery, you do need to have a direct contact in order to have that energy exchange. Mm-hmm. So it is just literally touching the earth. Every part of your body is conductive, so it doesn't matter what you touch it with. A lot of people think you have to be barefoot, but they don't like going barefoot, or it's muddy, or there's shards of glass, or there's, fire ants, or it's too hot and it's too cold. So it really doesn't have to be bare feet. That's a huge misconception. If I take one fingertip and touch one leaf on a tree, I'm fully grounded, like I'm swimming in the ocean or, laying naked on the earth. It's the same. So there are tons of different ways to make our body, any part of our body, touch any part of the earth outside, which includes grass, it includes dirt, sand, it includes all the bodies of water. So when you're touching a river, a lake, a stream, morning dew, an ocean, and it also includes anything growing out of the earth. So any tree, any leaf, any bloom, any blossom, any weed. And then it also includes anything that's on the earth that just doesn't block it. So anything that's not plastic. So sidewalk cement that is poured on the earth, you can just touch sidewalk and that will ground you. And like anything that's conductive, so we all can probably understand that metal is conductive. So if you have a metal signpost, and this is a very easy way to get grounded in a city, you just touch a fingertip to a metal signpost while you're waiting to cross the street or whatever, and you're grounded that way. And then on top of it, two more things to mention, and then we'll go into winter strategies. But pretty much any man-made water supply is also grounded, because it's so funny because we have rules and regulations that you have to ground your water tanks and your electrical systems and your fridge and appliances to protect the lifespan of the appliances. But we don't do that for our human bodies, right? Like, why aren't we protecting our health? I don't know. But so anyway, any water coming, so when I'm washing the dishes and I have my hands under a stream of water, if I'm in a public building and and I'm drinking out of the water fountain, that stream of water is grounded. If I'm in a city and there's a fountain or a water feature, if I'm in a hotel and there's a pool, if I have a hot tub, even if it's up off the earth and plastic, it's the water filtration unit has to be grounded to the earth. So you are grounded all the time. Yes. And then lastly, there are indoor grounding tools because of the fact that all homes by code have to be grounded. All buildings do for safety. So in an outlet, in a grounded home, the third little hole, you know how there's the two electrical slits, but then there's a third little hole, that's the ground.
Yes.
And so we have now discovered that you can use indoor grounding tools by plugging into that ground, only the ground, not the electrical slits, but just the ground of electrical outlets. Will also allow you to use grounding tools inside. So we can go deeper into that, or we can just stick with going outside, which is obviously preferable for many, many reasons.
Oh, right. I mean, I've done a lot of research into the benefits of nature, and we don't even know what they all are yet.
Absolutely.
But there's, more than I about the sort of the immune system and all of the stuff. That's so great. Hi, Zesties. Hey, if you're enjoying this episode, I would so appreciate if you would share with just one person, like a family member or a friend who would enjoy and benefit from Zestful Aging Podcast. Thank you so much. Now, I'm just going to sort of selfishly talk to you about grounding mats.
Okay.
I do have a grounding mat, and now that the weather is getting a little chillier, I'm wondering, can I wear my wool socks, or does that have to be feet to the mat?
Okay. So it's sort of case by case. If you have moisture, then water is so highly conductive, it will help you ground through fabrics. So and typically our feet, it's, again, not a coincidence that the bottom of our feet have the highest density of sweat glands, because it makes your bottom of your feet very moist. And especially if you're walking, there's grounding shoes. So if you walk outside and you're not initially grounded, the minute you walk a few minutes and your feet start sweating, it becomes conductive. So if you're wearing thick wool socks, for example, that maybe is sort of blocking it just because there's so much dry fabric between you. After a
I
few minutes,
see.
as your body produces that moisture, it probably will ground you right through. But there
Oh,
are
okay.
silver socks, conductive socks specifically for that purpose. But I would say when I test my clothing, my sheets, my blankets, socks, like you said, a picnic blanket outside, if I'm going to sit outside, I would say at least a third of the time I can ground through the fabric. So it's a good chance you
Mhm.
are, but I can't promise. So if you are a little
Sure.
bit unsure, then for sure, just direct contact is
Yeah.
always a no-brainer. Yeah.
I think maybe direct contact
Yeah.
and then in the winter, a blanket over. Now,
Yeah.
I know that many people don't really feel anything,
Yeah.
but when I'm on my grounding mat, I feel something.
Mhm.
It's not unpleasant. It's just kind of a little tickly
Mhm.
through my feet.
Mhm.
And you talked a little bit about that in one of your YouTube videos.
Mhm.
Can you expand on that?
So this is very complex. It seems like it should be so easy, but it's super complex because if there are negative symptoms, that's a whole nother ball of wax. And we can definitely
Mhm.
go into that. I'm happy to go into it. But if it feels positive, if it feels like a relief, yes, a lot of people can feel this energy from the earth and it becomes a relief, and they feel warmth because it does increase your circulation. So you might feel warm, you might feel tingling.
Mhm.
If it's pleasant, if it makes you feel centered, if it makes you feel in the present moment, if it helps calm your mind,
Mhm.
if it helps calm your heart, then it's all super positive. The second branch of that is if you don't feel anything, do not worry, because based on 50 years of double-blinded studies, we know that the results are not corollary with feeling it. You know what I mean? Like if someone who doesn't,
Mhm.
because we do studies and we make people sham grounded. They're not actually
Yes.
grounded, and they don't know it, they don't feel it or not feel it, and they still get, the results that are not placebo based, that are profound healing benefits. So it's not based on feeling. So if you feel nothing, that's still okay. But then the third arm that I think is worth mentioning is if you feel unpleasant results, which some people do using indoor grounding tools, it's probably because you're grounding in, unfortunately, a man-made AC type of electrical field. And if you're electrosensitive, of course, even if you're not grounded and you're in that field, you probably have negative symptoms. If you find you can't sleep at night, if you find you're anxious, if you find your heart pounding, that doesn't have anything to do with grounding. It's probably just because you are in an electrical field from your lamp cord or your computer cord, or, you know,
Mhm. Mhm.
but if you are grounded, if you are in that AC electrical field and not just getting the DC current of the earth, sometimes people do feel negative symptoms. So if you start grounding indoors and you start feeling a headache, it's not the grounding giving you a headache, but you just want to make sure that you maybe cut off the breaker of that room just to double check and make sure you're not in an electrical field. And then all of a sudden it'll feel like that relief, like you're outside again. And it's because
I
you're getting rid of the man-made overlay, basically.
I see, I see. So I know that this is not one of the things that's wonderful about it. It's not a huge process. You don't have to add it to your busy day
Right.
and say, oh, I've just set aside
No.
45 minutes now
Nope.
to ground.
Mm-hmm.
Either I ground or make dinner.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so what is a good starting time frame?
Yeah. So I like exactly what you said, 100%. Think of one activity that you do that you could actually just do grounded to multitask. And there's millions of them, and I'd love to run through a ton of ideas for you.
Sure.
But I
Yeah.
would say okay, so the medical studies are very clear. Within seconds of your body becoming grounded, there's health benefits. Within seconds, your muscle tension decreases. So literally, if I'm about to get a tension headache and I just go out and touch the earth in some way, usually I just hold a leaf on a tree, and I count to 3, my muscle tension is measurably decreased, and I might prevent an entire headache just from a couple seconds. Also, within a couple seconds, your brain wave patterns shift from stressed out to very calm, centered alpha healing brain waves, which you also get during sleep, which you also get during prolonged meditation. So if you're having mood issues,
Rest and digest.
yes, you're going to, within seconds. So I don't like to say there's any time even too short, because honestly, a couple seconds can rescue you from some kind of, pain or inflammation or headache or nausea. I mean, a few seconds has can clearly make a difference. But if you really want to start seeing long-term benefits beyond just immediately feeling better, but you want to say, oh, I want to start sleeping better or balance my hormones more or have less sore muscles after I work out, you probably are going to want to shoot for a good 30 minutes a day. But again, if you can think of something that you do, so if I'm going to weed through my emails for 30 minutes, or I'm going to read a book for 30 minutes, or I like to sew, or I need to stretch because my physical therapist told me to do some stretches, or I'm going to eat my lunch break. If any of those things, plus a million other that you can take outside to do grounded or do grounded indoors on a grounded healing tool, the multitask, like, again, like you said, don't think you have to add a single more thing to your day because most people are just overwhelmed anyway. But if you make it part of what you do, so like when you drive, nobody would say I didn't have time to put a seatbelt on. It's part of what you do. You put your seatbelt on and then you drive. So if grounding is essential to human health, which I feel that it is as essential as drinking water or putting your seatbelt on or getting sleep at night, it's that essential. So I'm going to make sure that one activity I do today, I'm going to do grounded while I do that activity. It's not adding time, but it is actually saving my health, just like a seatbelt.
Yeah, I have my grounding mat under my desk in my office. And I mean, I'm just at the computer a lot. So it's not even something that, I think about.
Absolutely.
It's just the weather changing. That's making me think, I guess I need to figure out about these wool socks.
Right.
I see. I'm wondering how it is for you as a physician, as an MD, being in the realm of this, I guess what we'll call an alternative practice. How has that been for you in your career?
Yeah, it's challenging, but I luckily I do have that conventional background, so I do feel like I'm sort of a bridge for people who really do want to make sure this is medically validated because they're suspicious. Like, if it's so important, why isn't it already part of conventional medicine? And I would just say we've been closed-minded about it. We do know that the body is highly conductive. We do use electrical, monitoring to see if your body's functioning well. And we're starting to realize that we kind of need it actually as a healing tool, not just to monitor disease. So it is starting to be part of conventional medicine, but I do think that's why people are more willing to hear me talk about it because I can bridge people, because I was totally conventionally trained. And then and I can tell you about it, but I had an experience where conventional medicine frustrated me. And I actually found that grounding was super helpful. And from there, I started diving into the research and I realized, oh my goodness, we've actually known about the Earth's electrical output since the early 1900s. I think it was like 1912 was the first recorded measure of the Earth's electrical activity called the Carnegie curve. And from there, starting in the 70s, we've done lots of research on what happens to the human body when it's separate from the earth and when we reconnect it to the earth. And when I started seeing that there's decades of science behind it, then I can totally stand behind it and hold my head up, even if there's people who won't be open-minded enough to it.
So you had your own health event that caused you to try it?
Yeah. So I was totally conventional my whole childhood, my whole life, just to get into medical school, get through all that. I was just a gung-ho, totally into prescriptions, totally into conventional medicine, which is just, planned into this very conventional life, which is totally fine, not knocking it. But then I had my daughter and I became a mom. And of course that softened me and it opened me up to the fact that our bodies aren't just these functional scientific machines. They actually hold souls and they actually they're important just for the lifespan of our children, which, that I can't think of anything more important than how you feel about your child's health. So my daughter had colic so bad and she wouldn't stop crying. And I'm a physician and I still cannot get her to stop crying. So of course I did what any other mom would do in a panic. And I took her right to her pediatrician and I was crying and I was like, I can't stay. She's so uncomfortable. Please fix it. And it was the first time I really was desperate for conventional medicine to help me because I couldn't think of anything else. And they did in a conventional way. And it didn't sit well with me. I had a 6-day-old child who would not stop crying. And I walked out of that office with 2 or 3 different prescriptions of an antacid, a painkiller, an anti-inflammatory. And I thought, this child is literally just barely started breathing air. I don't want to start squirting all these liquid prescriptions in her mouth. It just bothered me. And then the other option was cry it out, which also did not sit well with me. So the only thing I literally could do, and at the time I lived in Arizona, so it was very pleasant, very warm year round. I was almost always barefoot, just coincidentally, just because I like being outside and I'm almost always barefoot. And the only time she didn't cry is when I was outside with her holding her in my arms, skin to skin. My hands were on her, or she was on my chest, or like her head was on my neck. And I was always barefoot, and I would just walk her outside. And so for a long time, I'm talking about months, I thought, oh, she just likes being outside, right?
I see. I was going to say, did you take all your meals outside?
Oh, yeah.
And,
but I just thought, oh, this girl likes the sound of birds. This girl likes the wind. This girl. And I thought that was fine. And that's all I took it to. I just thought, oh God, survival. Yeah, we would be up all night with her crying inside. So then I'd go out, lay out a blanket, and we would just nap outside on the ground because there was just no other survival. Okay, so at first it was just survival, but I did feel very disappointed in conventional medicine because there just was no other offering of comfort at all. So that's how we survived it. So then at some point, at some play date somewhere, some mom said to me, you and your daughter are so grounded. That's the word she used to describe it. And I think she meant like just our energy was very centered. But I thought, that's interesting. And I went home and I plugged in on PubMed in the medical research, grounding. And lo and behold, decade after decade after decade of research studies started popping up. And I thought, are you kidding me? And then I started going back and thinking about how in cardiology, in ICU, in neurology, in everything we use to monitor the human body, almost everything is electrical, and studying the electrical conductivity of the body. And so this really makes sense. And why did I just go through all that training and not hear of this not one time?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so then so I had a son as well. And of course we did a lot of grounding. And then I tried to go back into conventional medicine, and girl, I'll just tell you, it just did not sit well with me. It was too, you get 10 minutes, you write a prescription. I remember I had one young woman, I did a pap smear on her and gave her birth control prescription, and she left, and that was fine. Like, that's totally normal in conventional medical standards. But I felt so uncomfortable. I just had this bad feeling. I was like, that's somebody's daughter. And I just had this feeling she wasn't safe. I don't know. I felt like I missed something because I didn't have a minute to even say, how's your relationship?
Sure.
Where do you live? Do you have nutrition? Like, you can't even go into that. So I was so worked up over this girl. I was so anxious about her that I actually went in the bathroom and threw up. And I was standing there in the bathroom thinking, I can't do this. I can't do this. I cannot do conventional medicine anymore because we're ignoring everything. And like, so I literally, that was the moment where I was like, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do conventional medicine.
It's so interesting that you're talking about this, Laura, because as I'm a psychotherapist that's my other gig, and I have seen physicians who are like, this is not what I had in mind at all. And I'm sure there's a huge crisis in your field. People are leaving in droves, or they're staying and they're getting into a lot of trouble with mental illness, substance abuse, suicide. It's a real crossroads that folks are in.
Yeah.
Wow.
Unfortunately, the medical system, at least in our country, but I mean, in a lot of, worldwide, it's like pay to play. If you have enough money and enough resources, you might be able to see enough specialists that you kind of feel like you're getting seen, but you're never really still as a whole person being seen. Usually you're segmented, but that's the closest you can get. And you have to have a lot of money to get that close to feeling balanced in health. Otherwise, it's such a struggle for access, even just to mental health care. It's just such a struggle. It became so obvious to me that this is a pay to play system, and it just made me sick. I couldn't do it.
Wow. So how did you transition to a different kind of practice where I'm guessing you talk about things like grounding?
So I had to take a few years off because it really made me so super sick. And I had 2 little kids at home. So I didn't know, honestly. And I got so much flack. You just went through 10 straight years of medical school and residency and stuff. Why would you do? And I just, I didn't even really have an answer. I just couldn't do it. So I did take a few years off. When I started going back, I actually just didn't even embrace the conventional world at all. And I went back into intuitive medicine, and I just started doing private consults with people who wanted an intuitive take on what all their body symptoms were telling them. So after doing that for multiple years, and then my kids getting old enough, I went back, I merged the two, I'd say. Started looking at the medical research, started seeing more conventional, and realizing that maybe my role here isn't so much to just walk away from conventional medicine as to get people who conventional medicine is failing and just kind of support them more. So that's what I'd like to do now is I think it's not one or the other, it's and. okay, I'm going to do this prescription possibly, or this, physical therapy, and I might need this surgery, because all those things are super important. Like conventional medicine is life-saving, but
it's
right,
great in an
right,
emergency, not so great for
right,
prevention.
100%. If I'm in a car accident, please take me to the ER. You know what I mean? Like, please. But does it keep me well? And no. So it's and this. That's kind of where I married the two, is like, it's this and.
So besides grounding, and I know how passionate you are about, I can see you on your YouTube videos, like, it's like you
animated,
just so excited you are. Do you have other processes or practices that you recommend to your patients?
Oh, I mean, absolutely. Like, I don't even know where to even start. I mean, you could look on my TikTok channel. I just put out like my top 7 holistic healing tips for, like, my focus is on maintaining health at this point, instead of being the fire hose in conventional medicine. So yes, I mean, optimal sleep is absolutely necessary. Good, pure water is absolutely necessary. Some kind of exercise and movement, absolutely necessary. All that, so yes, of course, grounding is only one small part of it, but yes, I definitely go back to the basics with everyone. At this point, there's a bunch of supplements I usually recommend, because I don't feel like most people nutritionally have their needs met. So, it's not the only thing that, like, our whole health doesn't hinge on. And in fact, I do hear that sometimes is, well, I'm grounding and I'm frustrated because I still have this pain in my knee or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, it is not magic. It does have to be part of something comprehensive. Like, if you needed,
I'm grounding, but I'm eating McDonald's. Right. So.
But on the other hand, it could be the missing piece for a lot of people, because I do get a lot of people, since I'm holistic, who are super healthy. They do yoga 2 hours a day, and they drink raw pressed, the best diet, and they still don't feel that great. And so if grounding is your one missing piece, when you add that in, it can be transformative. I've had people who were going to have surgery to relieve pain, like carpal tunnel syndrome, for example, and they could cancel it because they started grounding and it reduced inflammation and it healed their body enough. So if it's your one missing piece, this could change your life. If you have a lot of different areas to work on, then it's going to just be one piece of the puzzle, but it is an essential piece. It is.
Oh, I'm hearing that loud and clear. Now, do you see people telehealth, or do they have to be in South Carolina?
The closest thing, I won't do telehealth, but I do run online health classes. And in fact, right now, as we're talking, I'm running an online grounding class to help keep people an idea every single day. Okay, today we're going to go and we're going to ground for 10 minutes through a plant. Today we're going to ground 10 minutes through water. And today we're going to, so I do online classes, which are accessible to anybody in the world. But that's as close to telehealth as I enjoy.
That sounds, you have so many offerings. Tell us how, that we can find out more about. You've got so many great resources, and your TikTok, I don't do TikTok, but I do YouTube, and you've got great stuff there, and a ton of people watching it.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
So my website, because I started off intuitively, is, and I haven't changed it since then. So it's intuitionphysician.com. And I do, online classes. And like you said, there's a ton of free resources. First of all, on that website, I keep a running list of all of the grounding medical studies, so that anyone who's, I have heart disease, what can it do? Well, go in my list and click these 3 studies, so I keep a running list that is constantly updated with new research. So that's a free resource. I have a bunch of free online classes and free ebooks and that kind of thing. Like you said, on YouTube, TikTok is definitely my largest fan base, like 5 times bigger than YouTube. But yeah.
Oh my gosh, I just can't do it. I'm like, I was just getting so burnt out. So now I'm basically like, if it's not on LinkedIn, I'm not going to see it.
You have to pick and choose.
Good for you.
For sure.
Good for you. And you were also involved in a film or films about
So there's multiple films, and most of them you can watch on YouTube for free, since you mentioned it. That's worth saying. The first documentary on grounding was called The Grounded, and that's on YouTube for free. The second one was called Heal for Free. That's also on YouTube, where they show people grounding and the transformative results from that. There's also
with the thermal, that's so cool. Some of the thermal photos where you
directly
can
see inflammation.
The difference.
Yep.
That's really cool.
And then there's the earthing movie. There's a bunch more now at this point. But there are, anyway, so there's links to that on my website as well. And then I would say if people would just want something non-intimidating to start with, I wrote a book called The Earth Prescription. And that just is such an easy read. It talks a little bit about the science behind it. And then I just give you ideas around the clock and year round, no matter what season it is and no matter where you live, how you could ground outside. The focus is outside. So in the winter, how do I ground outside? It's a whole chapter on that. In the spring and the summer. So if you just want an idea book, just an easy read, that's usually what I tell people to start with, which is The Earth Prescription.
The thing that I learned recently from you is about the moisture.
Yeah.
I mean, I will, because I'm outside with my dogs a lot and I'm walking and hiking, but when I put my hands on these beautiful trees, I don't think there's tons of moisture because it's the bark. And I'm like, oh, this is so awesome. But now I'm going to do it differently based on what I've learned from your YouTube saying, you got to get some moisture in there
and you're
somehow.
super right. It is awesome. Like being outside, you're still going to feel, there's so many other health benefits like the microbiome and the sun and, all that. But if the bark is totally dry and your skin is totally dry and it's thick bark, kind of like your hair, it can be insulatory and cut you off. So the only part of our body that's not conductive is hair because it's dry and dead. So it's kind of like dry clothing or dry shoe, it can block. So very thick, dry bark is blocking you from the moisture of because that's why trees are grounded, is the sap and the moisture running through it. So
I see. It's like their blood.
Exactly. And so if you're touching thin, like twigs, thin bark, you're grounded through that, even if your hands are dry, because the tree is providing moisture, and leaves, the tree is providing plenty of moisture. So that's why it's sort of a no-brainer if you touch that. If you touch thick bark and it's wet, though, you'll be grounded right through that too. In fact, moisture and water is so conductive that I have been able to test, even if I have plastic flip-flops, if they are soaked wet, I can still get grounded through it. And it's not because the flip-flop, the plastic is grounded. It's because the water is grounded all the way through to my skin. So I'm grounded. So it's just moisture is an incredible benefit to grounding.
Yeah, you have to understand the basic principle here. And now I'm starting to learn more about it and looking forward to trying it. I mean, I have the grounding mat that I use every day, but I'm also outside on trails with my dogs. And I think I could do a better job now that I understand the basic principle.
Now that you mentioned dogs, that reminds me, if you're hiking and it's cold and you don't actually want to directly touch the earth, but you have your dog with you, your dog is grounded because their paws being on the earth. So if you just pet your dog, not in areas where there's dense fur, because again, fur would probably block you off. But if you kiss their nose or you pet, like you rub their ears or their belly or around their snout where there's less, you're going to ground through your dog. So honestly, even just taking a water break for 5 minutes and petting your dog,
do a belly rub.
You're going to notice your mood shifts, your muscle tension decreases, you feel more centered. Like you can ground through anything living that's touching the earth. So that includes your dog.
That's a win-win. Everybody loves that. Well, this has been so interesting, and I love your enthusiasm. When we find something that we really believe in, it's just a lovely thing. I so appreciate you spending time with me today and explaining this, and I think my audience will really be interested in finding out more. I'm so
grateful. Thank you so much for being open to the idea and really having such a good way to introduce it to your listeners, because I really loved how you started with the electrical body. And I've been in interviews for years and years and years now. And like you said, in many feature films, no one has introduced it that way. They always start with what's grounding. And then you lose people, because they don't even want to care what the term is. But when you start with, here's how our body functions, like you did, that was just phenomenal. That was great.
Well, I take my interviewing very seriously.
Yeah, you're good at it.
And, thank you. And so, you're just feeding the beast here.
Awesome. That's awesome.
It's like, so thank you so much, Laura.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much for joining us on Zestful Aging. If you like the podcast, please share it with some of your friends. Our theme song is All I Did Was Wait for You by Kjartan Abel. Visit Kjartan-Abel, that's KJARTAN-Abel, ABEL.com to hear more of Kjartan's work. And our technical director is Stephen Litweiler. And stay tuned next week for another interview with a fascinating and inspiring guest. See you then.